You think you understand how work works? You don't, not here. I stayed late to fix it, he said. His manager didn't look up. Why? Because it needed fixing. A pause. Then quietly, or because you needed to be seen fixing it. Nobody reacted. No approval. No criticism. Just a silence that made the effort feel unnecessary. That was the moment I realized this place didn't reward effort. It filtered it. And if it wasn't aligned, it disappeared. My first week in a London tech firm, I decided to impress them. I stayed late, cleaned up a messy spreadsheet, fixed formulas, added color coding, even automated some calculations. The next morning, I presented it like a win. Thought I'd improve this, I said. My colleague glanced at it briefly. It worked before, he replied. I smiled, waiting for more. Nothing came. Just a nod, then silence. I tried to explain the improvements. Now it updates automatically, I said, pointing at the formulas. He leaned closer, studied it for a second, then straightened. We don't really need it to. That was it. No curiosity. No follow-up. I felt my energy drop in real time. Back home, effort like that would get noticed instantly. Here, it felt like I brought something extra nobody ordered. By the end of the week, people were still using the old version. Mine sat untouched in the shared folder. I asked if something was wrong with it. No, my manager said calmly. We just prefer to keep things consistent. I nodded like I understood. I didn't. I hadn't improved anything. I'd just created a second version of something that already worked, and now everyone had to ignore it. That's when it hit me. In the US, improving something always looks like initiative. Here, improving something unnecessary looks like disruption. The system isn't waiting for upgrades, it's built to run smoothly already. And if you add something without being asked, it doesn't make you look smart. It makes you look like you didn't understand what mattered in the first place. In my second month, I tried to be more social. Monday morning, I walked in energized. Morning, guys, big week ahead. I said, smiling. A few people nodded politely. One said, morning. Then everyone went back to their screens. I stood there for a second longer than I should have. The energy didn't bounce back. It just stopped at me. I thought maybe I needed to push a bit more. Anyone watch the game last night? I added. A guy across from me glanced up briefly. No. That was it. No expansion. No return question. Just a clean, closed answer. I smiled, pretending it wasn't awkward, then walked to my desk. It felt like I'd tried to start a conversation in a room that wasn't open for one. Later that day, a colleague named Sarah stopped by quietly. Can I give you a small tip? She asked. I nodded. Mornings are quieter here, she said carefully. People ease into the day. I blinked. So I should talk less? She smiled slightly. Just wait a bit. That phrasing stuck with me. Not don't talk. Just don't be the first thing people have to deal with. In the US, silence feels like something to fix. Here, silence is something to respect. It's not emptiness, it's space. And when you fill it too quickly, it doesn't feel friendly. It feels like pressure. Nobody tells you that directly. They just respond less. Shorter answers. Less engagement. Until you realize the problem wasn't the room. It was your timing inside it. At a firm in Bristol, I sent what I thought was a perfectly clear message. Hey, can you send the report by 3 p.m? Need it for a call. Clean. Direct. Efficient. The reply came back 20 minutes later. I'll see what I can do. I read it as yes. Of course I did. Back home, that's a soft confirmation. Here, it wasn't. 3 o'clock came. No report. I messaged again. Still on track. He replied at 3:15. Not today, I'm afraid. I stared at the screen. I thought you said you could do it, I said later. He looked at me, slightly confused. I said I'd see what I could do. A pause. That usually means probably not. That was the moment language stopped feeling reliable. At a marketing agency in Manchester, I tried to speed things up. We had a meeting scheduled for Thursday, but everyone was already in the office Wednesday. Let's just do it now, I said. Save time. People looked at me, then at each other. We've got it booked for tomorrow, someone replied. I nodded. Right, but we're all here now. Silence. Then, yes. For today. I pushed again, smiling. It'll take 10 minutes. One colleague leaned back slightly. Then we'll use 10 minutes tomorrow. The logic didn't move. It just stopped me. Nobody argued. Nobody agreed. They just held their position quietly. I felt like I was suggesting something obvious, and they were rejecting it without resistance, which somehow made it harder to push against. The meeting happened Thursday exactly as planned. Same room, same people, same topics. But this time, everyone was engaged. Notes were taken. Questions were asked. It flowed. Afterward, someone said, it works better when it's expected. That was it. Not about efficiency. About structure. I hadn't tried to save time. I'd tried to skip a step the system actually needed. That's when I understood something deeper. In the US, efficiency is king. If something can be done faster, you do it. Here, predictability matters more. The schedule isn't just timing, it's agreement. And when you move outside of it, even with good intentions, it doesn't feel helpful. It feels like you're changing rules mid-process. And people don't adapt. They just wait you out. In a Cambridge office, I gave direct feedback during a team review. This doesn't work, I said, pointing at a slide. The idea's weak, the execution's messy. Silence. The designer nodded slowly, wrote something down, didn't argue. The meeting moved on. I thought that meant we were aligned. It didn't. Something shifted in the room. Subtle. But noticeable. Later that day, my manager pulled me aside. Can I suggest something? He said. I nodded. You were very clear in there. I smiled. That's the goal. He paused. Clarity is good. But direction is better. I frowned slightly. I told them what was wrong. He nodded. Yes. But not what to do instead. That distinction hit harder than the feedback itself. The next review, I watched how others spoke. The idea has potential, one said. But it might sit better if the message is simplified. Same critique. Different delivery. Same outcome. But the room stayed open. Nobody shut down. That's when I realized my version didn't just give feedback. It closed options. It ended conversation before it had space to evolve. Right when I thought I figured it out, I realized I was still getting it wrong. At a consulting firm in London, I presented a full strategy deck. Weeks of work. Data, projections, clean slides, strong finish. I clicked to the final slide and waited. Back home, this is where you get energy, questions, reactions, something. Here? Silence. Then the director said, "Thank you." That was it. No feedback. No discussion. Just, "Thank you." I tried to open it up. Was there anything that stood out? I asked. He looked at me for a moment. Slide 18 had a useful breakdown. That was the only comment. One slide. Out of 40. I nodded, pretending that made sense. Inside, I was recalculating everything. Back home, you measure success by reaction. Here, reaction meant almost nothing. After the meeting, I caught up with a colleague. Was it bad? I asked quietly. He shook his head. No. Then why no response? He shrugged slightly. People will use it if it's good. A pause. That's the response. That stayed with me. No applause. No visible approval. Just quiet adoption or quiet rejection. And you don't always get to see which one it is. That's the hardest shift. In the US, feedback is loud. You know where you stand. Here, feedback is silent. The system doesn't perform reactions, it produces outcomes. And if you're waiting for visible signals, you'll miss everything important. Because nothing is said directly. It's shown slowly, over time, in ways you only notice if you stop expecting immediate confirmation. At a publishing office in Sheffield, I ignored the tea rounds. I don't drink tea, I said every time someone asked. It felt harmless. Honest. By week 3, nobody asked me anymore. One afternoon, a colleague named Mark sat beside me. Can I tell you something? He said. I nodded. The tea isn't the point. I frowned. Then what is? He paused. Being part of it. I laughed a little. So I should make tea I won't drink. He shrugged. Some people do. I glanced toward the kitchen. Even if I don't like it. He nodded once. It's not about preference. That sentence landed heavier than it should have. I'd been opting out of something I didn't value, without realizing it wasn't built around me in the first place. The next day, I stood up awkwardly. Anyone want tea? I asked. 3 people looked up. One smiled slightly. Yes, please. I made 6 cups, got 2 orders wrong, and still felt more included than I had in weeks. Nothing dramatic changed. No big reaction. But something shifted. Quietly. Like I'd stepped into a rhythm that had been running without me the entire time. That's the part nobody explains. Work isn't just tasks, it's rituals. Small, repetitive things that signal you're inside the system. In the US, participation is optional if performance is high. Here, performance without participation feels incomplete. And if you ignore the small things, the system doesn't reject you loudly. It just stops pulling you in. Slowly. Consistently. At a logistics firm in Portsmouth, I thought I'd finally learned the language. A colleague reviewed my proposal and said, "That's quite interesting." I nodded, relieved. "Great," I said. 2 days later, my manager called me in. "We need to revisit that proposal," she said. I blinked. But Patrick said it was interesting. She held my gaze. "Yes. That's why we're revisiting it." I frowned. I thought that meant he liked it. She shook her head gently. "Not here." A pause. Interesting usually means something isn't right. I leaned back, trying to process that. So why not just say that? She smiled slightly. He did. That was the moment I realized I'd been translating everything incorrectly and confidently. Later, I asked Patrick directly. "When you said interesting, you meant there was a problem?" He nodded. "Yes." I stared at him. "Why not just say that?" He paused, then said calmly, "Because I didn't want to shut it down completely." That answer stayed with me. It wasn't avoidance. It was control. Keeping the conversation open without making it confrontational. 6 months in, I had my performance review in a Bristol office. I walked in expecting balance, wins, strengths, maybe a few improvements. My manager handed me a sheet. "Let's start with development areas," she said. For 30 minutes, we went through everything I could do better. Precision. Timing. Tone. Not one mention of what I'd done well. I finally asked, "So, am I doing okay overall?" She looked up. "You're progressing." That word hit strangely. "Progressing sounds average," I said. She shook her head. "No. Average stays the same." A pause. "Progress means you're moving." The meeting ended there. No summary. No reassurance. Just that one word, and everything I was supposed to understand from it. That's when it fully clicked. In the US, you prove your value loudly. Here, value is assumed and slowly adjusted. Nobody tells you directly where you stand. They show you, over time, through small signals, quiet feedback, and subtle shifts. And if you don't learn how to read them, you don't fail dramatically. You just drift slightly out of sync with everything around you.